Thank you for coming for the spotlight on Jaime Hernandez in conversation with Paul Karasik. I want to also thank our host, Leslie Art and Design, who have now hosted MICE for 10 years and just made it possible. So thank you, Leslie. I also want to mention that MICE is produced by the Boston Comic Arts Foundation, or BCAF. BCAF is a 501c3, which we created to make MICE a nonprofit, but with a broader mission as well, to support and encourage the art of independent comics, encourage the artists, help the material reach a broader audience in the Boston area and beyond. We are assisting in newer shows as well as MICE, such as the Boston Kids Comics Fest, which will have its third annual show this spring, Comics in Color, which will have its first annual show this spring, and Pod Tales, a dramatic podcast show, convention, festival, which will have its first ever show tomorrow in Lunder Hall next door. So come see it tomorrow. And we welcome donations to help with BCAF's mission and to keep MICE running as well. So now I will introduce our honored guest and honored interviewer. Paul Karasik is the co-author with David Mazzucchelli of the graphic novel City of Glass, adapted from the book by Paul Auster and chosen by the Comics Journal as one of the 100 best comics of the 20th century. His cartoons appear in The New Yorker quite frequently. Paul teaches at the Rhode Island School of Design and starting recently also right here at Boston University. And he is also the author of the wonderful book on Nancy by Ernie Bushmiller, How to Read Nancy.
I'm sorry, I'm the co-author.
Co-author with Mark Newgarden. How to Read Nancy, which is on sale at the Porter Square Books table, and I highly recommend. Jaime Hernandez was one of 6 siblings born and raised in Oxnard, California. His mother passed down a love of comics, which for Jaime became a passion rivaled only by his interest in the burgeoning punk scene of the 1970s Southern California. Together with his brothers Gilbert and Mario, Jaime co-created the comic book series Love and Rockets in 1981, which Gilbert and Jaime continue to this day. Love and Rockets has evolved into one of the great bodies of American literary fiction, so it says here, but it's comics, spanning 4 decades and countless high water marks in the medium's history. In 2017, Jaime, along with Gilbert, was inducted into the Will Eisner Comic Book Hall of Fame, and in 2018, he released his first children's book, the Aesop Book Prize-winning The Dragon Slayer, Folklores from Latin America, also on sale here, as are many other Jaime books, at the Million-Year Picnic and Jaime's Table in the atrium. And I would also just like to say that when we started MICE as a little comic show 10 years ago, if you had asked us what special guests we would like to have, we would have said Jaime Hernandez. We would have been joking because it was such an impossible dream. But today that joke and that impossible dream has come true. So thank you.
Okay, so when I got this, undertook this task of even thinking about interviewing you for this, I was really intimidated because you produced so much work, and it just is staggering, like just your output and variety of material that you have done. So I enlisted some help from some friends, and I just asked a bunch of cartoonists, like if they were sitting up here, okay, what questions they might ask you. This is a really good way of getting off the hook here. So if any of these questions suck, it's because somebody else came up with them. So the first guy, I asked Chris where, and Chris wrote, I'm reading this verbatim now, okay? Chris wrote, "You and Gilbert have produced the most prodigious body of work in literacy comics fiction of any cartoonist of your generation. In fact, you more or less all but invented it for the rest of us, and we all owe you all. We all owe you." And he wrote, "That's not a question, just something I wanted to say." So Chris loves you, and obviously these people came because they love your work, and what's there not to love? So for Chris's first question was, what's your daily work life like? Do you have like a routine?
Are these on?
I think, yeah.
Oh, okay. I try to, most of the days looking at a blank piece of paper, you know. I've learned that over the decades, that I can't make it come to me. I mean, I can't make it happen. It just has to come to me, you know. So a lot of times I'm not doing anything. I think of an excuse and I go to the post office or something.
If it's not happening.
Yeah. Sometimes I turn on the TV and channel surf, you know. But when it does, when I'm on a roll, it's like I get up in the morning and I go straight to it, you know.
So that's kind of leads to Chris's second question, which is, how do you know when something works in a story, or maybe more obviously when it's not working?
I just trust myself, you know, my gut feeling, like this isn't going anywhere, and through experience, this isn't going to go anywhere. You know, I know that this will be a failure, so I got to think of something else, or you know, this works because I know these characters will take it somewhere. You know, I trust the characters most of the time. You know, if Maggie's in the story, it's going to go on forever.
Right.
Because
she's a force of nature.
Yeah. Some characters make it come to a halt, and I have to change the character, or I have to rethink that character of what their decision is. You know, sometimes someone saying yes works better when they say no.
Yeah.
You know, the story will go further, you know.
So, like, practically speaking, are you like going through a sort of a traditional process of thumbnailing, sketching, scripting before you're actually doing your finished art?
I start with a loose script on a pad of paper. And a pad of paper?
Yeah.
Pad of paper. Is that correct?
They still exist. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I usually will write there, but then I will go directly to the page, and everything is edited and thumbnailed on the page. I don't like to do pre thumbnails because it's done.
Yeah.
You know, it's
the
finished.
fun part is done.
Yeah. So I like to kind of surprise myself. I want to have as much fun as the reader does.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly like trying to redo things to excite me, kind of.
You know, I went to this talk last night with Chris Ware, and he basically said the same thing. And I was like, wow, you know, I teach my students like the opposite, you know, it's like thumbnail, get your script, know exactly what you're doing before you draw. But there's all sorts of different ways to work.
Yeah, some people love that process.
Yeah.
You know, me, I just do what feels right.
And then when it starts feeling right, you just go with it.
Yeah, and it just explodes. Yeah.
So, I sort of wish I was there doing it. Yeah, so...
oh, no.
Yeah, well... yeah. So class...
This is not going to be a serious one.
No, actually, it's going to be... Most of these are pretty serious. He says, this is Dan Klaus writes, I had dinner with you recently, and talked at length and at depth about the impact of Gilbert's childhood comics on your own life and career. And I know we've talked about this a little bit too. And like, how did your sort of like, he was making comics before you were, right? As a kid.
Sure.
And you were watching him over his shoulder, and how did that affect your own interest in comics, or how did the whole thing get started with you two?
Since I had 3 older brothers, I just copied what they did. You know, Mario started drawing comics. Gilbert started drawing comics. My brother Richie started drawing comics. I just thought whatever they did, I did. I had no concept of storytelling or anything. I just drew, you know, and didn't have a story, but I just wanted to do what they did, and something just kept me there. And naturally, as the years passed, Gilbert was the one that he was like a fireball. He just kept at it, and he kept coming up with different titles and different concepts and stuff. And I was just like, how does he do that? Now he'll say, I was just copying the X-Men, or I was just, I was just copying what those things are doing. I go, yeah, but you would start something and you would finish something. That was mind-boggling to me. I didn't get how he could do that,
but it was something you wanted to try to do.
I just wanted to do it because it was fun for me, but I just didn't. I couldn't create my universe like he did because I didn't know how to tell a story, you know.
Do you remember specifically something that he drew from when you were kids that were like, oh, that's the coolest thing I ever saw?
Well, there was that one. I couldn't find those pages, by the way.
Yeah, Easter egg hunt.
Gilbert did, he would do these holiday comics, like Christmas book, Easter book, you know, Valentine book.
Right.
And he did this one, Easter book. And it was one that I just loved so much, and I would just look at it over and over, even when he was ready to throw away his comic, you know, because after he had a bunch, he'd throw away and start over again. And he had this one, but Easter book I kept. And I just loved the way it just moved, and I don't know why, and just the images and all that. So I redrew it for characters I created.
And you were about how old at that time?
I would say 6, 7, you know, and I redrew it panel for panel for myself, for my characters, and then his was gone, like thrown away or whatever, and he'd forgot about it. And then years later, I had a whole new set of characters that I redrew it again.
And you were how old then?
I was about 12, maybe. And I was, but I was kind of updating it to be like, you know, like, oh, instead of here they sock a guy, they shoot a guy, you know. And it was just something I just loved, and I just redrew it a lot. And then one day I needed an idea for Love and Rockets years later, and I did Easter Hunt with Maggie and Hopi, and I went back to his original panels, tried to remember what his panels were, and I did it panel for panel, just like he did it, but with your new style. Yeah. A good level of obsession there, huh? Yeah. It's really great story too. I love it. Oh, there they are. Huh? Oh, can I do this? I think this should work. Okay. So yeah, I understand I was Chavo in that story, but it was also my other younger brother. He just threw a lot of us in one character. Yeah.
That's like 3 brothers in one.
Yeah.
So here, my friend Tillie Walden, and Tillie is a younger cartoonist who's probably most of you guys know her work at this point. She's like 24 and she's done 9 books and won an Eisner Award. She's just like this incredible cartoonist. But so she's interested in your images of women. And she writes, you've drawn so many female characters with specificity and flair. Is your drawing of women based on your own attraction to certain type of physicalities? And which of your own characters do you find most attractive?
The ones that you can tell when I draw. I don't know. I just like to draw.
You should be careful. I think this is the anti-Robert Crumb crowd here. So,
but I got to be honest. I draw women and different sizes because I love women. I mean, I'm not afraid to say that. It's just I love women for 100 different reasons, and this is one of them. I just like how women look and how they move. And
I like how those guys in the background look. Look at that fucking mouth.
So I mean, it's pretty simple. And pretty obvious when you see it.
Yeah, I mean, like these two women, Hopi and Maggie. Like you've drawn them like thousands of times, and you don't get tired of drawing them. Do you?
No. I just love bringing them to life.
Yeah.
And that's.
Do you feel stronger about? I think maybe what Tillie's getting at. Do you feel stronger about one of them than another, or they're just?
I like them all for different reasons. Yeah. I mean, obviously the ones I like to draw most are the ones I like to draw most.
Yeah.
Well,
so I can't quite remember the chronology. I'm really not up to speed. But did Hopi like disappear for a while? When she?
There was a couple of times
she just kind of like didn't see her for a year or two. Yeah. But Maggie's kind of pretty much.
Maggie, I can't keep my hands off. Yeah, she's just the one that fits the best,
Yeah. So Dan, I also wanted to thank Dan for pulling together most of these slides here. And this, there's a, so who are all these ladies?
Lady wrestlers.
Yeah, are these, some of these are actual wrestlers and some of them made up?
No, they're all made up.
They're all made up. Uh-huh. Yeah. So you guys, both you and Gilbert, like wrestlers, right? Do you watch wrestling when you were kids? Or?
Yeah. Grew up in the days when there was territories.
Yeah.
L.A. had their own
group. Like neighborhood.
Yeah. And then Texas, and then Ohio, and New York, and stuff. And a lot of the wrestlers crossed paths.
Yeah.
But it was just. L.A. at the Olympic Auditorium was just ours. We watched it live on TV. And stuff. Yeah, it was just fun.
A ritual.
It was just fun. Wrestling is just. It attracted me most, not because the macho thing
posture
and physicality, but more the humor. I mean, there's no humor like wrestling humor, in the world, and especially, I hate to say it, the older days when
there'd be feuds and
and the
drama.
The villains just knew how to rile the crowd, and watching Ric Flair in his young days, walking up with his $1 million suits and then take his shoe off and say, this shoe costs more than your house, and the audience would just be so pissed off, and it was just perfect, and they just had that kind of swagger, of like, we're the best, man, and it was just cool, and then of course they would get their butts kicked in the ring, and you'd be just going, yeah.
Did some of these have their own story? I can't really see who's there.
Well, Rena in the middle.
There's Rena, right?
Vicky Glory up in the Maggie's aunt.
Yeah, Maggie's aunt, Glory.
And a couple of them that I just mentioned on the side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rena's great, huh? She's still around, right? You're still drawing her?
I did her for the New York Times.
Yeah.
Her last story.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's Penny. Yeah. Jason Lute says Jason wants to know a little more about the background stuff in the early days. What were things like when you were working on the earliest issues of Love and Rockets? Where were you living? Who were you living with? You know, where did you guys decide that you were going to do like this? This is the first issue of Love and Rockets before there was actually, before Fantagraphics, in between this and Fantagraphics, there was another publisher?
No, this was the one we self-published. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we did this while I was living with a couple of cousins in my punk days when we started this. I don't know. But we wanted to do a comic, and we decided to do it ourselves. You know, that old DIY thing.
Exactly.
And
who was the ringleader there? Was it?
Mario had the idea because Gilbert and I had been doing stories for ourselves, hoping they would be published somewhere, but we had no place to take them.
Yeah.
There was no alternative market in 1981.
And so you self-published this issue, and what did you do with it?
We kind of just let them sit there. We didn't know. Had no idea how to sell them.
Yeah.
You know, we would go to local cons in LA, and just kind of ask around.
Who wants to buy this?
Anybody
thing?
like? Do you think this could sell? Or you know, and they would go, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then we'd just go home like.
What did we just do?
Like what do we do with this? How do you get it out there? What and it wasn't till Gilbert sent a copy to the Comics Journal to be reviewed.
Do I have a copy of that? Yeah, I thought.
And that was the first Fantagraphics issue.
Okay, so Gilbert sent a copy of that to Fantagraphics, to the Comics Journal, to get it reviewed.
To get it reviewed, and he thought that would be like good publicity, that maybe someone would say, hey, I want to buy this. Mm. And we didn't know.
And Gary Groth, the publisher, saw it, the editor of Comics Journal.
He saw it, and he said, I love this. Can we publish it? Just like that.
Wow, that's great.
Because it was at a time when Fantagraphics were considering getting into the publishing comics, and a lot of people who hated the Comics Journal, which were mostly Marvel and DC people, just hated them, said, "Okay, Groth, what's good? If our comics are so bad, show us something good." And Gary goes, "Got to put my money where my mouth is," and he thought this would kind of do it.
It was a good idea. It was perfect timing. And this is some early stuff.
That's Gilbert. Yeah.
That's Gilbert, yeah. But there we go. Yeah. Like when you look at this stuff from the first couple of issues, like I know I look at my old work and I kind of cringe, so I'm like...
You're cringing.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Yeah, I remember the first couple of issues, it was very sort of sci-fi, superhero-y, the whole mechanics thing. Had sort of like there were superheroes walking around with capes and shit.
Yeah, that was because when we decided to do this comic, I didn't know what to put in, so I threw my whole life into it, my whole history
all the stuff
on Earth of everything I was into, and I just threw it all in this comic, and eventually the stuff I liked the most stayed. And everything.
The pretty girls.
And the characters and living in their Mexican neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know, that just started to get more important to me. You know, because it was what I was living. You know. So.
And yet at the same time, like there would be some odd-looking characters would be walking around, like not quite human, still.
Well, that was just because it was just fun to draw. You know, I just didn't. I would rather draw a weird alien than a car.
Yeah, you know? I don't blame you. I'd rather draw anything than a car. And then, you know, there's this whole sort of punk scene was going on. And Jason continues to ask, like, what kind of music were you listening to? What was the social life? Were you partying and going to, punk clubs? And what was going on while you were doing
at the
this?
time I was still doing that. Our little Oxnard scene started to grow, so I was going to LA less because in the beginning I was going to LA clubs to see the local bands, and by this time we started to have our little group of. We started to find punks in our town.
Oxnard.
Yeah, like you'd go to the record store and go, "Ooh, that guy has a Blondie button. Ooh, like he's punk." But it was just anything. It was just like we're so hard up for that. So, and then we would meet somebody and they knew somebody, and we'd go, "Oh, there are punks in our county," because we were just like hungry, in our small town.
Yeah, for that energy.
Yeah.
And what were you doing? So did you guys have day jobs? Like sort of.
At the time, I didn't. I was going to college, getting paid $300 a month, living on that.
Yeah. And then drawing comics and staying up all night at clubs.
Yeah. Kim died.
I know. This is a really weird one, Kim, and something I didn't know. Right? Okay. Kim writes, "I know you studied with Vern Hogarth, and you have great drawing chops." That's just like, and he's complimenting. He says you got great drawing chops. They're coming from Kim. That's really nice. I always assume your studies with Hogarth had something to do with that. Could you talk a little about what it was like studying under Hogarth? So the first thing, if you don't know, this is Vern Hogarth, and he drew Tarzan. He's one of a series of guys who drew Tarzan, but the real physical Tarzan with lots of muscles and dynamic. Dynamic tension, dynamic anatomy, or something.
Right.
So,
but no, I never studied.
You never studied under Vern Hogarth.
Never.
Okay, Kim died. No.
But Hogarth was teaching in LA at the time. Maybe that's why he thought.
Okay. Where did you study? I mean, did you study?
Did I study?
Drawing? Did you go to school? Did you go to take art classes? Or?
I took left drawing and stuff like that, but most of it was just self-taught.
Yeah. Because Dan was able to find these slides, and it was like, oh, yeah, okay, Vern Hogarth. No. Okay, Vern Hogarth.
No, I just watched. I just had favorite artists and comics, and I just would learn how to lighting and
studying
and body language.
Did you copy cartoonists? I have a regular assignment with my students where I give them something to copy every week, and they have to copy a panel, and then they've got to do something in the artist style, just like.
Right. It's good exercise.
Yeah, and get you looking at something else.
But no, mostly it was when I was learning to ink. Was mostly when I was copying artists. I mean, by the time I was 16, I developed my own style of art.
Yeah. But when you were a kid, lots of copying.
No. Just being inspired. I knew I couldn't draw like Jack Kirby.
Right.
I knew I couldn't draw like him. I tried.
Yeah.
And then I just go, fuck, I'm going to do my own version. Yeah.
So when you were kids, I know we talked about this a little bit too. I know there are certain cartoonists who you and your brothers really loved. Who would be your top, if you guys were sitting around and you're all 6, 8, 10 years old, who would you be talking about? Who did you like?
A lot of the artists didn't have names at the time.
Right.
They weren't credited.
Right.
I didn't find out till the 80s and 90s, some of them.
Yeah.
My favorite artists.
Carl Barks, great Disney artist, didn't sign his work because he worked for Disney.
He was the good duck artist.
The good duck artist, exactly. Yeah. And when we were kids, we knew there was a good duck artist.
Yeah.
But we didn't know who it was.
Yeah, and it was kind of the same with the artists I liked. Marvel started to put the names of their artists. So Kirby, I fell in love with.
Ditko.
And Ditko.
Yeah.
But I also liked the Archie artists. and the Dennis the Menace artists.
Yeah.
And so three of couple of my favorite artists did Archie comics, and
they would be
the Harry Lucy who drew the Archie title.
Mm-hmm.
He taught me body language. I mean, he was just a master of, because I mean, he would have whole stories of just people talking. There was no trappings to hide behind. So he had Archie and Reggie walking down the street, and they would be talking to each other, and they'd be going back and forth.
acting. They'd be acting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he was just really good at that. Yeah. And same with the artist who did Dennis the Menace, Owen Fitzgerald. He was
incredible.
People always think of Al Weisman because he was technically perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Owen Fitzgerald I think he was an animator.
More expressive.
Yeah, and he just would draw Dennis talking to his mom, and I go, that's me talking to my mom.
Yeah.
Because he would just have him at home. Yeah. So it didn't hit me till later that I go, my favorite artists were the ones that didn't use trappings. They were the ones that had to draw Dennis and his mom in the bathroom while he's taking a bath.
Right.
And
so he had to do no machinery, no fancy.
Yeah.
Trappings.
So there was one page. I've talked about this a million times, but I'm going to talk about it again. There was a page where Dennis wants to go to the North Pole so bad because that's where Santa lives, and his mom, he starts going, what's it like in the North Pole? And it's this page of Dennis, his mom giving him a bath, and she's going, oh, well, the North Pole, you got, you have polar bears, you have this, you have that, and it's just her, and then she's putting on his sleepers for him, and he's getting tired, and then she puts him to bed, and it's just this whole page of just normal stuff. But Fitzgerald was just such a genius at that I just felt like this was home. Yeah. More than anything. Yeah. More than other things.
And I think we see it in your work. There's very rarely do you have a character, just sort of standing talking to the reader, unless that's what they need to be doing. When people are talking, they're walking down the street, they're having a cup of coffee, they're always acting. Yeah. Because you can learn so much more by what a character is doing as they're talking. You can learn what their attitude is towards the other person, what it is about what they're thinking and saying. Yeah.
But one of the biggest tricks I had to learn, that I had to teach myself, was, yes, these characters are acting, but I have to get them off the stage. Yeah. They can't, no ham, it's got to be natural. And so that was the biggest lesson I learned was like, get these guys off the stage. They're not hamming it up, just have them natural. As natural as possible. Yeah.
And more Burn Hogarth. Okay, David Mazzucchelli. Okay, so this is another thing I never heard about. Okay, so David said, 30 years ago you made a story that ended with a single panel in which Hopi was part of a surprise menage a trois. Do you know what I'm talking about? This is what happens when you draw 10 zillion pages of comics. If I remember correctly, you heard from a number of fans who said things like, Hopi would never do something like that, to which you replied along the lines of, I think I would know better than anybody else what Hopi would do. And let's see, let's move ahead. So it's in this, it's the end of this story.
The Carters,
and this is, I think this is it, right? And there it is. Yeah. And there's the menage a trois on the last panel. There it is.
And it was a gag.
It was a gag.
And Hopi went along with the gag.
Right. She was game for it.
Yeah. But see, you don't know this till few issues later, that night the three of them got super drunk and he pregnated both of them.
Did you know that was going to happen?
No.
Okay, so that's really what David's question was, because the next thing he says is, you've been telling stories about the same characters for decades. Have any of them ever surprised you? And so there's a perfect example. You drew this like a year later. Suddenly you found out,
Right.
uh-oh, they're pregnant.
Right.
That's so cool. I mean, that speaks to you knowing these characters sort of in such an intimate way.
And the biggest trick was that Hopi was the least person to be in that kind of position. How do I make it work for a character like that? So I had to work harder at
figuring out what her motivation was and how she found herself in that position.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you remember now that are saying that people giving you shit for like?
Oh yeah. They started to tell me that Hopi would never do that. This person would never do that, and that just made me mad. It just made me like hold fast.
I wonder if it also maybe inspired you to like figure out, well, why did she do this? And,
Sure.
and then visit that again later.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you? I know. I mean, I know there are people who really are experts on the history of your characters. There's still people who say like, do you remember that back in issue 12 of Love and Rockets when this shit happened?
Usually I remember.
You usually remember.
Usually, not all the time.
Yeah. Do you ever take advice from or listen to fans, or mostly they just piss you off?
No. I like when the fans tell me what they thought the story was about that I didn't intend to, and I go, oh, I didn't think of that. That's good. That's good. And that's when I started to write my stories where I left just enough open where the reader could make up their own mind.
Oh, great. Great.
Because a lot of them had really good insight to it. Like I thought it was about that, and I would go like, well, no, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah. We talked about that a little bit this morning with Bushmiller, like allowing the reader to do a little bit of the work, or keeping the door open and let them do some interpretation.
Sure. And I like that because
it's really a gift.
It brings me closer to the reader.
Yeah.
And it brings the reader closer because they're part of it.
Yeah.
That's
so cool.
I want them to be yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so Emil Ferris, your questions are great. So Emil Ferris asks, have you ever seen a ghost?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't have the gift.
You haven't seen
I don't
ghosts.
have that.
Okay, these are going to be sort of rapid fire questions. Which monster would you most wish you could be? Like if you could be any monster.
Well, I remember when we were kids and we played monsters.
Yeah.
Everyone wanted to be the Wolfman because he could jump on things. He could jump and he was fast. No one wanted to be the Mummy.
Too slow.
And Frankenstein.
Really too slow.
Yeah. But
Wolfman, he could move.
Wolfman was the cool guy.
So you'd still opt for Wolfman? Like,
Well, I didn't get to pick usually.
Oh yeah, you were the lowest man.
The
on
older
the
kids would.
Yeah. You'd be left with the Mummy.
Yeah, and my little brother would be Frankenstein because he had a square head.
Okay, the third question from Emil. Did you ever have a dream wherein one of your characters told you something or made an appearance?
Maybe, I don't.
It's hard to remember. I can't remember my dreams, though. No. When you were a child, who was your first movie star or superhero crush?
Might have been Mrs. Peel from the Avengers.
Yeah, me too. All in leather, and she was just so cool.
She was cool, and she did stuff that usually men would do.
Exactly, like kick guys' ass.
So it seemed, even as a kid, I was 6 or 7.
Yeah.
I remember just like, Mrs. Peel is cool, and it was not a question of, but she's a woman. It was just Mrs. Peel was as cool as the cool guys, and I think was a thing I carried with me when I started creating.
And she also had a sense of humor.
Yeah.
I had a crush on her for sure. Yeah. And my older brother still gives me a hard time about it. It's like, they don't forget, do they, your brothers? Bastard. Okay, this is Emil Ferris's last question. Did you ever commit an act of revenge? And what did you do? These are just some monster slides. Just because she is so into monsters, and so pick some monster slides.
An act of revenge?
Yeah.
No, because I'd get beat up, you know?
Yeah.
There was always someone bigger than me.
Yeah. Right.
Always. My revenge was success, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. Now, who's laughing now?
Yeah.
There's some more monsters. Yeah, you like to draw monsters too, right?
They're fun as hell.
Yeah. Wait, what's going on here? This guy?
Maggie's is dreaming about
it's a dream.
that she unmasks this wrestler.
And that's
because she's kind of obsessed about what he looks like. And so she has this fantasy.
Wow, I kind of like her face even more than the monster's face. It's so beautiful. Okay, so I'm looking at your drawing, and I remember you told me this years ago that you don't use a brush, do you?
No.
Like every line that looks like a brush line is actually made out of built-up pen lines.
A nib that's worn out.
It's just insane, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, this looks like brushwork. Wow.
Yeah, I work them where they get old and they're
useless,
and they're flexible.
Yeah.
So I can do kind of strokes with them, like brush kind of strokes.
So you work them, and then they stop becoming pens, and they sort of start becoming brushes.
Kind of, but for the art, not for like blacking in or anything. And then after a while they get too old and like too thick or they just don't do what they used to.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a certain age in the nib that like, all right, it's a little too stiff right now, but I know it'll get there. And then it's like perfect for a while. And then it's kind of like, this one kind of outlived its...
Have you found over time, is there a certain brand that you use?
The Hunt 22.
The Hunt 22. And have you found that the Hunt 22 is not what it once was? Or is it still
material-wise, I can tell.
You can tell. It's not as... It doesn't last as long.
There's something that they changed. They put in the metal or whatever.
Yeah, it's crappier. How about paper? What kind of paper?
I still use Bristol board, the smoothest kind, the 500 series. The
Strathmore 500.
Yeah, because I need the pen to glide.
Glide, right? It can't have any catch. Yeah, and is it as good a product?
No, for a while there, Strathmore just fell apart, and they sold it to somebody that just killed it, and it was the worst paper in the world. And the 500 series was the top, and I couldn't go anywhere from there.
Right.
So I would just try different paper, and I would try to, see what worked best. And it was a learning experience every issue I'd start.
And has Strathmore gotten back to being?
It's gotten pretty good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Back.
There's another monster.
Not like it was, but
but good enough. And you're using it.
Yeah, I'm still using it. Yeah.
Okay, James Sturm, are you enjoying this stage of your career? Do you approach your work any differently now that you're such a venerated and beloved figure? He means that seriously. What's your relationship like with Younger Cartoonists? And how is it going these days?
It's cool. It's really cool. People are very nice, and I'm nice to them. I'm encouraging. I mean, I remember being young and not caring what old people told me, so I imagine most of them are like, yeah, I'm going to do my shit no matter what you say, and it's good. More power to you, I don't know. Just
not sure.
Well, that's new stuff.
This is. I think that's like, this is just from the last issue. Isn't it? Yeah. So when you look at this, are you seeing something like, what wouldn't you not have done, say 10 years ago, that's on this page?
I think it would have been about the same. 10 years ago, maybe I might have taken more care with it, or I don't know.
It's pretty careful to me, man.
I don't know. It's
Oh God, I love that guy's expression.
I just like when I have something to draw, and it's so this being kind of just fantasy stuff. It's
so much fun, right?
It's fun because you don't have a rule book,
Yeah.
you know. So.
And this is a relatively recent kids book that I just love. I read this to my 7-year-old granddaughter, and she just ate it up, man. She loves this book. It's 3 stories.
3 stories. Yeah.
And did you enjoy doing this? I think we got some page from it.
Yeah, I kind of had fun with it because, like I said, there were no rules.
Yeah.
You know, I got to draw a dragon, and nobody could say that's not what dragons look like. You know, so yeah, and I had fun, and I liked the character.
How did you choose these 3 stories?
I chose this one myself because I liked that it was a fairy tale. A girl gets ousted from her family.
Yeah.
She has to find her way. She goes to the kingdom, has to kill the dragon, and is like a kind of Cinderella story.
Yeah.
But I really liked about it that she does all the work. Through the whole story, she has to do everything.
I think that might be my granddaughter loved this one especially, you know, obviously.
And it was kind of like how I treat my characters. Maggie's got no superpowers or anything, yet Maggie always feels like she has to fix something.
Yeah.
And she doesn't always succeed, but I just love the fact that she will try.
So she got this
even
will.
if she doesn't want to. She just feels she has to. And that's what I saw in this one. And I can't remember, someone might have said like, well, the first one's kind of a Cinderella story. And I go, yeah, but she does all the work. Nobody saves her. She saves everybody.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the other 2 you didn't choose? The
other 2 I talked about with Francois.
Yeah.
You know, we talked a lot about.
That would be Francois Mouly, the editor of the Toon Books, just in case.
The boss.
Yeah, the boss. And what?
That was my first Archie cover ever.
Was it like a dream come true?
At first, it was just a job, you know, like, okay, I'm going to get paid to do a cover. And then when I was inking it, and I was inking him, it just hit me. I go, hey, I'm drawing Archie.
That's so cool.
After all these years, I'm drawing Archie, man. I mean, if you look above, that's what he looks like. He's all cool and stuff. But my version is like the old one. Archie was a dork.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that Betty with her back to us?
It wasn't, but it could be.
It could be, okay. And then this is another.
The Archies.
The Archies.
Yeah, they. So many people that want me to draw band pictures because they want the Love and Rockets 24 cover.
Right.
And I drew that. I'm not going to draw it again, right. You know. But so I try to think
this iconic cover of Love and Rockets with them wailing just midair.
Yeah. And so I try to think of another angle every time.
And here we're in the audience.
Yeah. Well, that's how I like to.
Yeah. Situate.
I've always treated the band thing as a member of the audience instead of the band.
Yeah.
You know. That's the latest.
This is the latest issue?
Yeah.
Do we have that for sale here?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And there's olive oil. Are you a Elsie Seeger fan? Do you like Popeye?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
What's there not to like, right?
That's one of the best strips,
Ever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then here, my colleague, Mark Newgarden, who's back there in the audience, he has 2 questions.
Uh-oh.
What are your biggest regrets? And what can you do about them?
My regrets. I don't know about regrets, but screw-ups.
Okay.
More.
Yeah.
I have done some of my best stories because of screw-ups. Making a whole graphic novel about the mistake making it like it was on purpose. And I found out I have a gift for for making you believe that it was like supposed to be that all along.
Can you sort of give us an example?
The story Browntown in the Love Bunglers.
Great story.
That came out with a screw up because as I was creating Maggie's family, I gave her a family of 5 sibling. I mean, she was one of 5 siblings. And I was like, finally, Maggie has a family. You understand where she comes from. And then I just happened to look at issue 7 from way back early 80s. And they mentioned 6.
Uh-oh.
And I went, oh!
What happened?
Okay,
The missing
6.
case of the missing sibling.
So I added in a panel of this story of the 5, and I added where Maggie's younger brother goes. Oh, and then there was Calvin who ran away when he was 16 because he got a girl pregnant or something, and it was like, oh, haha. And I go, okay, 6th sibling.
New story.
But I kept going,
Calvin.
What did he do? What did he? How did he do it? And I kind of didn't want to let it off cheap. I didn't want to just go, well, that was the extra brother. Bye. So I thought about it. I kept thinking about it. And in that same issue 7, when they talk about the 6, they talk about Maggie moving away for 3 years. And the family moved away, and I always wondered, why'd they move away? What happened? But all I knew was that Maggie's the family came without the dad. So I wrote Browntown, where the family moves to the desert to be with the dad, and then it turns out the dad was cheating on him. And the end of the story is they leave, they go home without him. And I also thought, okay, Maggie was 10 years old to 13. That's a big jump in growing up.
I mean, hugely important years, especially for girls, I believe.
Yeah, and so I go, something
happened.
Yeah, and so the story ended up, that Calvin was molested, sexually abused by a neighborhood kid, and that's what kind of
led to this,
screwed him up, and where he was like he didn't go home with the family after. He stayed with the dad, and then he was just trouble from then on, and and then Maggie went through her growing up thing.
And during that period. So just making that one mistake with the ages led to a whole story thread and a whole new character and a whole new segment of their life. Yeah. Fantastic.
By the way, I drew the moon like that because that's what the moon looks like to me when it's full.
Oh.
It looks like a crying baby.
It does look like a crying baby. It has its own regrets. Oh, wow. We chewed up some time there. That was really fun.
That's it?
Well, let's see. I think we have time for... Dan, do we have time for some questions here? Yeah, just enough time for some questions. Oh, there, hands going up in the front row.
Just fast observation, not even a question. I just personally love the fact that you talk about your characters as if they're people. Because the whole thing is kind of like, how do you write? Would Maggie do this? Would she not do this? And the fact that your answers consistently have been, they tell me it's like you talk about people you actually know in your life as opposed to these artificially constructed characters meant to dance to your whims. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, over here.
Do you think that if you hadn't found your characters so early and found some resonance with them, that you would have had the career that you've had?
I would have probably found a way to work around it where it did work. I mean, I created a lot of characters that failed, that I just stopped doing because they just didn't work. So in a way, that's what would have happened. Anyway, I had no game plan other than I wanted to do comic books about humans. Everything else was just fluff around it. I mean, just backdrop. So it's all I had. Basically.
Yes, over here in the front. Yeah.
So many things. So again,
Choose one.
So again, thank you very much for making this book. I'm going to thank you until my dying day for making this book about Mexican American culture, because you're absolutely nailing it. The thing that I'm wondering a couple of things. Number one, when you were young and into like comic books and punk rock, and was your family like weird about it? Because I know you and Beto were like really into punk rock, and you had your own band.
Right.
And Apex is a real band. But was your family weird about it? And do you remember the Cholosine Teen Angels? And like, do you remember seeing that at all?
Sure. Read Low Rider magazine and
Yeah, because there was when I first started reading Love and Rockets, there was something that was very much like that page with Bobby and Maggie could have come right out of Teen Angels.
Right.
And those were some of the first comics that I read. But was your family like? Did your family accuse you of like trying to be like white? Because I feel like Maggie has like her family thinks she's acting white. I get that all the time. I know what it means. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, in my neighborhood, which was 90% Mexican or Latino, we were rockers, and all our friends were into soul and funk and disco, and they thought we were weirdos because we liked, Kiss. Yeah. But this is before punk. Even before punk, we were into like glam and T-Rex and
Kiss.
And Kiss and stuff like that. So my friend, even if I would hang out with my friends, we go cruising on Sunday night and stuff, I still liked Kiss, and that was me and my brother. I would go home to my family where we were all these weirdos in our neighborhood or something, I was called Falso my whole life, growing up, and I was just like, well, I'm not going to give up Kiss just because you think I'm a phony. I'm a fake Mexican, Yeah, so, yeah, and then when punk came along, it was kind of like, this is kind of like cruising, but it's music. It's a music scene now, So it just was fine, and I was just happy to do it, and I didn't care what others felt because I had the support of my brothers and other friends,
It seems like your family was like super cool.
Yeah, we were weird, and we liked comics too. That was another thing. Nobody liked comics,
My mom was like Maggie's mom. She's like Keena. She's like Hannah.
That's great.
Like, what I'm talking about.
Right.
Was there somebody back there? No. Oh, here. Okay.
Maggie was actually very ahead of her time because you drew Maggie as she was gaining weight at a time where it was not acceptable for a woman to gain weight. And I'd like to thank you for that. Like you did in real time, realistically, and of her reactions. Even though she had a beautiful face, she had this low self-esteem. And when a lot of people go when they gain weight, which is out of control, and the way she's doing construction and everything, when in reality, even though her boyfriend loved her, she was still so tormented in reality.
Yeah.
She was fine. So I thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
The progression of, how women body shape over time.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
thank you.
It also helped that when I did it, I got hate mail.
That provoked you to keep going.
You're gonna give me hate mail, and you're just gonna get more of it.
She's gonna gain a few pounds. What really amazed me was that she like always looked like herself. Like,
Right.
No matter you know how she looks so well that you can have her add 10 pounds, 20 pounds, go back to being, skin and bone. She's always who she is. She's just this identifiable icon, and she's so great. In the back.
Do you listen to music when you work, and what in general are you listening to these days?
Kiss, right?
Sometimes. I'm listening to a lot less music than I used to because now I'm writing and drawing at the same time. When I'm writing, I have to have everything turned off. And I used to write, and then when it was time to draw, then I would just have music going all the time. But now it's like lesser because I'm constantly writing and drawing at the same time. So I don't have time for music, and so yeah. What am I listening to? Just anything, stuff I grew up on. Sometimes punk, sometimes not. Sometimes music I listened to in the early '70s, like Roxy music, or Mata Hoople, or I've yeah, I don't know, just and then I was 4 when the Beatles came, so I knew the Cultural Revolution, all that stuff, and stuff. So just all that. I'll just listen to whatever. Cool.
All the way in the back?
Yeah.
I feel like I have a special appreciation for your work because I'm from Los Angeles and grew up with a lot of Latino scene. And I think it's so great that a part of why it works so well is how it centers around these really strong female protagonists. And I'm just so curious, like, what that moment of inspiration was for you to bring these characters to life, because I think it would be completely different if going from two like male hot characters.
Oh, right.
And the fact that you mentioned that you tried other characters that didn't work before, like what was it about these characters that worked for you? What inspired them?
I just part of it was, I was real shy in school, so I never talked to girls, all through high school. I was just, and punk kind of freed that because there were a lot of women in punk, a lot of young women and a lot of outspoken women, and I really liked that, the Hopi types. I really loved that they were just loudmouth and didn't care what anybody thought. And I made friends with a lot of them. And I really just liked hanging out with girls. I just liked that. And I liked that, and I found through my characters that you put a character in a situation, a guy is going to have 2 responses. A woman is going to have 6 responses. You're going to, guys are trained to just hold it in constantly. Something tragic happens. Got to keep their cool, man. Women will go from one extreme to the other, broad, and you get to pick which one, And so that was another reason. I just liked that there was so much more to write with women, and I didn't know if I was doing it right, not till a woman at a comic show said, "I really like the way you write women." I was like, "Cool, hey, cool." So yeah, it is that and I mean the bottom line, and I don't know if this is right, but I would rather see a woman walking through a door than a man. Simple as that. A woman fixing a toaster always looked better to me than a man doing it. I don't know. It's I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just why I just took advantage of that. I remember one of the earliest images I did of Maggie was she's fixing a high wire.
Oh, with that tool belt.
And she has a tool belt. Yeah, I thought it was sexy to have a woman wearing a tool belt. I mean, simple as that, So anyway.
Okay, I think just one last question. Back there. You.
First of all, it's amazing that you I never would have guessed. As an artist, is there anything, we say yes, that you still struggle with? You know, what are you still determined and excited to get better at?
Oh, just to tell the stories the best way I can. I mean, I figured a lot of it out, but not all of it. You know, I'm still trying to make the characters so human that it's impossible to see them as lines on paper. You know, that's what I'm always constantly striving for, is just that you kind of can't live without them because they're so human. You know, I'm just constantly searching for that. So it's something that I think I do pretty well, but it's still important to me, and still important to get that right, perfect moment where you forget it's lines on paper. You know.
Great. Thank you.
Basically that.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jaime. Thank you, Paul.